leave this episode.
No, you won't.
It's a perfect cold open. It's too good.
Yeah.
So we gotta ask, why is it that you like to be hurt each year? So, why is it that you allow this to happen over and over again?
I need more friends in my life, apparently.
That might be true. So we were talking about things that we were talking about while we weren't recording.
Things that we're not allowed to talk about on this podcast.
I know, right? We can't even explain the joke because that's
okay.
Podcast.
Let them be mystified.
They can just follow along next week when I'm sure we'll make the same joke again.
Yay!
Right.
Well, if it bleeds into speculation, since it'll be the last one before.
Yeah.
The book.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Totally. But seriously, why are we masochists?
Why is anyone?
It's part of the human condition, but I think
Probably.
The question is why. Several phrases came to mind because I don't know, I don't particularly know that I like to be hurt, right? But I don't seek out shows where it's like heartbreak or whatever, but at the same time I value them, if that makes sense. No one's particularly won me over. Like, for example, no one's like, hey, you should go watch Game of Thrones because everybody that you love is murdered in some horrific way. So that was a clue for me to not go watch Game of Thrones, stuff like that. But there are some movies that or stories that have been mediocre that as soon as there was some kind of tragedy instantly became 4 out of 5 or better, in my opinion, because the mediocrity kind of builds up to the story, so I don't know.
Well, we've all, I think, even in our required reading lives, you get that one book in your formative years where someone dies that you weren't expecting it. I think, I don't know, I can't remember who it was first for me. It was probably Of Mice and Men, where he kills Lenny. Spoiler alert for God knows how many decades old book. Well, congratulations. Now you know.
No.
I think the first books I was ever given as a kid was Harry Potter, because I saw the movie and I mentioned that I liked it, and my mom was like, oh, this is the avenue into books, and forced that down my throat. And then after that, it just got me on the Heralds of Valdemar by Mercedes Lackey. And there are stories that are basically hope and good people trying to deal with a lot of bad shit. So I was already like this is a bad situation, but how can you be a good person inside of it? And that just continued for forever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, okay, so because you brought up Harry Potter and because it is one of the greatest tragedies in fantasy, in my opinion, right? For example, so how did you deal with Sirius then, if you read that as a child? Did you not get it?
Read that. I was around 11 or 12 when I must have read that one. It is a little hard to remember, and I think I was kind of shocked that really she's going to take that person away.
Right.
And also just I guess it had to happen, sort of. It made sense, and it was that was my favorite book out of the whole series. So I don't know if I really thought about it, but now, because it's so many years later, this is just of course it was going to happen, and that is part of why that book is so good. Because that's all of the decisions, all of their recklessness. Yes.
Okay.
So it has Umbridge too.
My favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite movie. I hate Umbridge, which.
But you're supposed to.
Yeah, right. That is, but that's not one of the things where it's oh man, I'm looking forward to hating Umbridge. The thing that gets me for Sirius now, my own sacrilege, right? I haven't read the books. I have only experienced it through the movies. But seeing Sirius Black finally out of the shadows, mostly, right? In every other scene you see him up to this point, he's doing something clever with magic so that he can talk to Harry Potter, or they meet in private, or or he's a crazy madman, or whatever.
Harry went to live with him for a couple of weeks at his old family home, and right. they were more together.
Right.
So losing him hurt a lot more.
Right, exactly. And so you get that, and you finally get a little bit of that family building, and something that he's never had up to this point is like a blood relative. And then you see Sirius like more or less in the daylight, right? Like thematically, right? They're obviously whatever, but you get to see him out, and you get to see him helping, and you get to see him great, and he's fucking amazing. And like, I love what they did in the movie, because his wizard duel is more like a gunfight than it is anything. Like, all the other wizards are careful, and they're, the flourishes and the deflection and the fireballs and the whatever. And Sirius is just like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and just going in like it's a knife fight or a gunfight. And then they were just like, oh, we bumped your elbow, and he's gone. And it's just so fast and so poignant, and just like, I don't know that it had to happen, but the way it happened, I mean, the only regret is that he's gone. Like, there's no like and I think it just kind of belies the random nature of the violence, right? Like, you could definitely talk about that, where it's like, great, let's all go off to war, and how glorified is that, and we're doing the right thing, and we're fighting the bad guys, and then guess what, good people die too. They don't make it.
To a certain extent, in that book, both Harry and Sirius are getting really, really cocky. They were being very reckless. So, of course, they had to have a bad consequence for it.
Right.
And if they didn't have a consequence, then they would continue being extremely reckless and not like understand. Harry especially wouldn't understand the risks involved in anything that he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So someone had to die, someone had to hurt, and the other person who is just as reckless makes sense.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, if it comes down to the boy with plot armor and, his uncle, then the boy with plot armor, guess what? He lives, because that's anyway. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm trying to think what my, what my first one would be, especially from reading, just because I didn't do a ton of like fantasy reading, especially early on, like, in somewhere around the 6th grade through, probably through high school. Like, certainly, my dad had like a lot of old books that like you never hear about. Like, he had H. Beam Piper, I think, and the Furries series, and this is supposed to be like some big deal thing, and basically they're little Ewoks, and it's some high sci-fi where it's like they're colonizing, and these little critters are running around, and they've got such poignant names for things. Like the dog lizard thing is called a damned thing, because that's fucking what it is, and whatever. So like, I read shit like this, but I was like, man, this is so thick, I'm not getting through this as a child. Like, whatever, we did, the Bug Wars, which I can't remember who wrote that, stuff like that. But, like some of these adjacent to like the sci-fi, the classic stuff that you would think about. One of the next ones that I can think was, definitely I was in high school when Lord of the Rings came out, and I was reading through those, but I don't remember, any of the deaths hitting particularly hard. Maybe, maybe Gandalf. Certainly in the movie they kind of sell it, but I don't know.
Well, a lot of people reference the final one where they kill a lot of people off screen type deal.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, like freaking dealing with Saruman off screen, like, what is wrong with you? So, like, originally, I know in the extended they've got it, but in the theatric they didn't. So, anyway,
it's weird to think that I don't want to be hurt, but I mean, at this point, I've realized that I do. It's just really weird to say that, but
because you don't want, you don't want the gut punches and whatever, but then afterwards,
they're so worth it.
Yeah.
So when I first watched Dark, like 2 months ago, maybe, I can't remember how long it was, I was genuinely heartbroken for a couple of days. And with one of my coworkers, he's kind of in similar interests, and so he said, you have to watch this and you can be as heartbroken as I am. And he was like, why would I want that?
Right.
And then I showed him the message that you sent me when you watched Dark, of the gif of Alice in Wonderland crying inconsolably. It's like, this is you have to get to this point.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing with changes, right? Like to bring up the thing we're not supposed to talk about in this, like
The
you
series that shall
build,
not be named.
yeah, you build everything up, and then it's taken away from you in layers, and like wanting to share stuff like that. That the only phrase that comes to mind is "misery loves company."
Mm-hmm.
Like part of it could be you don't want to be alone. That you don't want to have these things, but the other thing could be that having these feelings is part of being alive, and sharing them and wanting to share that kind of passion with somebody, like because if all this shit happened and you didn't feel anything, either maybe you've got some depression you need to look at, or maybe you're a psychopath. But like, because it's empathy, it's part of being a human, like having the empathy, having trying to think of the other word that, but in any case, like eliciting those kinds of emotions, like that's just, I mean, deal with a baby. Like that's where it starts to make sense. They watch your face and feel your feelings because that's how they learn to have those feelings too. Just, yeah.
A lot of fiction I've come to decide is emotional exercise. So it's like I'm picking up heavy weights in a controlled environment so that I can pick up weights in a less controlled environment and be just fine. I'm dealing with emotions in fiction so that I know more of what I want to do in actual emotional circumstances in my life.
I'm glad you said that. It's fantastic, because the thing I've been keeping in my back pocket where I could talk about it a little bit more without necessarily the wanting to get hurt stuff is the reason why I love Lovecraft, right? And like not him, but like his writing and the genre. And a lot of that has to do with like common people dealing with shit that is so far out of their depth. Like you are dealing with something that literally defies explanation. You are dealing with gibbering monsters that are just going to slither out of spaces they have no business being in, and they're going to eat your face, and that sort of thing. And just the idea of something being like literally impossible for you to manage and doing it anyway. And like there's something in my psychology that twigs to that, because like even preceding my interest in Lovecraft as like the subgenre and things like that was the F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, which paraphrased is the true test of a great mind is to realize that things are hopeless and continue all the same. That's super paraphrased. I feel like I'm missing the middle bits there, but it's kind of like the Captain America thing, right? Like a more common, people might know the line from Captain America from the comments where it's like, if the entire world is wrong and tells you to move, then you stand up there and say, no, you move. Same energy type of thing, right? And so for me, Lovecraft is like, look, I don't look at myself and be like, ooh, I wish I could get some of that dark power. I don't look at myself and be like, man, it'd be so cool to spend 30 years gibbering in an asylum. I look at myself as the guy that's like, well, I might get eaten, but because it's the right thing to do, I'm going to try and stop it. And I think that's where, Dresden kind of ties in too. Like Dresden has power. That's the difference. For him, it's not impossible, but for me, it'd be like, yep, I got a cap gun as far as this monster is concerned, but boy, am I going to stand here and try and stop it, so I don't know. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, so like to stand up to these monsters is to be damaged. It's that's one of the fundamentals of Lovecraft is like you don't get knowledge without losing a little bit of yourself for a little bit of sanity in the meantime. So but I guess to tie it back to your thought was, it's like exercise. It's dealing with these crazy, apocalyptic things in a safe environment, which right now is a little bit handy. So,
I mean, I've seen headlines, and they're probably just a bunch of fluff headlines, but the people who like horror handled pandemic stress a little bit better. It's maybe because they knew the steps of how to deal with stress. If like you see a bunch of people, even if you never have to go through it, but you watch them do the same process, it's like, hey, we go through this thing and then we do that thing, and then like I know where the endpoint is eventually.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And like I don't know, giving kids a whole bunch of fiction, I thought was one of the best things that my mom ever did. Was because of that, I saw conflict in people and ideas being challenged, and I saw them deal with it and the resolution. And she talked to me about it, and so I was able to explore it even more. And it's something I'm searching for in a lot of fiction, of like, people have these ideas and I love it when they're being challenged.
Right.
Like Sanderson has been doing it in almost all of his books that I've read so far, of like, there's someone with some sincere religious belief, and Sanderson is known as being Mormon, but there's always someone else that challenges it and they explore it. It's like, why do you think that that's right?
Right.
And I love it, because it's so easy to know that you're right and be wrong.
Right. Also kind of important right now. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not quite connected to masochism, but that process is painful. So I guess I do like watching people go through that painful process. That's more sadism.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it to other people, so, but yeah. See, it's funny because on the sadism front, like, I mean, on occasion, I take joy in, annoying people or keeping them on tilt or that sort of thing, that I used to take a lot more joy in it than I do these days. But but at the same time, like, there are a lot of these little vices or shows or whatever that I'm into that I try not to share with people. Like, Dresden is, in my opinion, good, wholesome fun. So he gets spread where, wide and far and whatever. But I'm very careful with, like, some of the horror and some of the other things. Like, a recent example is, like, I loved Prey. Prey is fantastic. Like, as a video game, it's a horror game. Obviously, there's jump scares. It's pretty much like Jump Scare the video game in some ways, right? But it's also very akin to a Lovecraftian type of horror in some of the ways the monsters interact and things like that. But I also know it is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like, I started talking to my brother and one of my, my best friend had basically been like, I love this game. You guys might like it too. He's like, I don't do jump scares. And I'm like, nope, just take a 90-degree turn and we're done with that, because it's like, I made it 30 minutes in, if that, and I was exploring pretty heavily, and guess what, I turned it off because I was pretty sure there was a jump scare. It's 2 a.m. and I don't need to be up till 5 dealing with it, so like, no thanks. But yeah, so with some of those things, like MMOs are another one, like, to get it out of the horror genre. Like, I just get sucked into, to that style of gameplay. And so, I'm pretty careful to be like, I don't know, do you have 40 hours a week of free time? Then this is probably not the game for you. So, e.g., come on. Something,
yeah, you're too quiet.
Hurts
Come
you.
on.
Why do you interact with the fans that are just going to hurt you and melt
That's
your
a
brain
good
all
point.
the time?
That is entirely different. That comes entirely from a place of superiority.
Oh, I see. So someone is
Needing
wrong
to be
on
right.
the internet and you have to be right.
Yes.
Got it.
100%. It is a major character flaw, and it's not one I'm going to change anytime soon. So.
Right. It's a flaw that you see as a sign of strength. So.
Oh, well, say flaw. It's a necessary flaw. Let's put it that way.
I see.
See, if anybody who wants to at any given time can justify whatever they do with that Captain America quote. So stupid people are going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I might as well.
I see.
Good point.
Which makes me hate that quote.
No, yeah. I mean,
because
I can see it in your face, but yeah.
It can be used for anything. It's such it's like most cliches and sayings and things like that. It's like, it sounds good in the moment. And when you're young, they're very easy to convey to, people whose brains are still mush and developing. But if you ever really like drill down and think about it for 5 seconds, like, wait, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?
Yeah.
What I think the biggest flaw of, the word I'm going to use here, whether it's accurate or not, is Americanism. Like, think about it from the founding fathers. Think about it with our symbols like, Superman or Captain America or whatever. It's that this shit only works if you're the good guys,
Right.
like.
But nobody ever thinks they're the villain.
Right. Also
and that
true,
is
so
extremely important.
Yeah, so like there are definitely some blind spots and some things left open because of that. Like to me, the Captain America quote, you know, another visual representation, taking it from a high fantasy thing, is the level 20 paladin with his gleaming shield and steed, all by himself, about to fight the hordes of evil. It's, you know, Gandalf leading the charge of the Rohirrim against the orcs. You know, like that's what it's supposed to be, but it gets turned into, well, you know, I've got this, you know, crazy conspiracy theory and nobody can tell me that I'm wrong because you're all wrong, because that's what Gandalf said. He said you're all wrong. Like, no, but he was fucking talking to the embodiment of evil. Like you can't just pocket that and be like, hoo, I'm going to tell everybody the earth is flat and nobody can prove I'm wrong. So I figured that one wouldn't make too many people angry. So
I expected you to start making fun of Rashid again.
In which way? Because
now it's like I have a crazy conspiracy theory, and you can't prove it wrong.
Nah,
there's no reason to make fun of the character for your bad behavior. Rashid did nothing wrong. The director, on the other hand.
Don't worry. One day I'll be canceled. You know it.
Soon. Soon. Justin thought everything happens in Peace Logs. Turns out everything happens in Battleground. But we're going off topic because we're not supposed to talk about that book.
Yeah, well, you talk about what you know and what you love. Like,
but one of the reasons we're excited for that book is because we know it's going to hurt. We know it's going to hurt. We saw some of the hurt afterwards in the Christmas Eve story and the damage already being inflicted on the characters. And so we're excited to see it happen because we're somewhere mixed between masochism and sadism. Emotionally, like, I don't know. It does feel, again, like I harken back to exercise because I don't want to pick up a heavy weight, but I'm also excited to do it.
Well, you're excited at it being done. You know, like you don't want to expend the effort, but you like thinking, oh man, I can really pick up that heavy weight if I wanted to, but I don't. So
yeah, I guess there are other benefits of like, hey, it's going to help my hips and thighs look better.
Or your heart, or, you know, whatever is important to you in the moment. But, you know,
that's why I never bothered with one of those.
Right. I worry about my hips and thighs all the time. So for me though, Battlegrounds, like talking about the like looking forward to it because it's going to hurt. Like I'm not looking forward to the hurt. I really do want, as boring as it would be, right? Which is why I'm not the author. I really do want all of our favorite characters to make it out the other side relatively unharmed because I'm an empathetic person, right? But I'm not excited about the hurt. I'm excited about the healing. I'm excited about what comes next, you know, and it sounds a little impatient because obviously we got to go down the dark road to get there. But, you know, like, again, it goes back to like mostly what I like about fantasy, right? Like I like some of the different genres for different things. And what I like about fantasy and the, you know, like sci-fi, like Star Trek specifically, is in one of them you're combating the evil, and in one of them you get to see the eternal hopefulness past that, right? So like, you know, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, we're fighting evil. You know, would you like to join us on our quest against evil today? Yes, there's hurt, but at the same time, for an older story, older style of storytelling, you know they're going to be okay. You know, classic joke between me and the wife is like, we're watching something we've probably seen before. We're watching, you know, the marquee character be like, you know, Kirk or whoever is like literally in the title, like Harry Potter. Oh man, he's in danger. I hope he makes it. You know, and because we're watching it with a 4-year-old, he doesn't know. Like he's all wrapped up in the drama of it, and we're like, oh man, I hope he makes it. You know, or like Hulk is getting beat up. I really hope he makes it. Whereas like to me, Star Trek is like, we're past that largely. You're like, obviously they've got conflict and whatever, but like, you know, there aren't, you know, you could make the argument for the Borg if you wanted to, I guess, but there aren't a ton of like, you know, just pure evil people they run across in everyday episodes. It's the exploration, it's the whatever. So
no, that's why it's good. That's when Game of Thrones used to be good before they decided, no, we're just gonna shit the bed. The whole point was he wrote it because it upended a lot of that. You couldn't after a while. You couldn't after a while take refuge in that protagonist safety plot armor thing.
Oh, right, that too, yeah.
You were like, well, anybody could go at any moment. I can't I can't accept that this conversation between two characters who are feeling each other out is not going to end with one of them taking out a knife and slitting the other's throat.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good.
Right.
There was a different kind of tension. You know,
Well,
obviously you can always watch the new Star Wars and whatever, but you can always watch pretty much anything, and as long as it's a tight titular character, you're basically know
And
99% of the time and how it's going to turn out.
when there was an exception, it stood out. Like maybe The Departed or something.
Mhm.
Like that completely takes people by surprise because they're expecting the good guy, the main character that you're following along, to make it, and spoilers, he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some tropes are not bad. It is not bad to use tropes and just like stick with them, especially if you like them. It can be fun, and people basically just know what they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
But when you turn them on their head in a very good executed way,
right,
it creates more tension because you don't know what's happening. And all of a sudden, I'm still invested in these characters and this plot and the story, but I don't know where it's going. So I don't know what I'm getting. And it better fucking be good because I want that payoff.
and that's the key, right? Like, so many people think themselves clever because they took a trope and they rotated it 90 degrees and they're like, haha, look at how smart I am. And it's like, yeah, bro, we've seen that 100 times and anybody can do that. But it's the cleverness, or it's in the delivery that really gets people.
The much harder to do versus like, I have the idea, I'm going to just invert it a little bit. It's like you have to drag it along the right way, deliver it and execute it. It's much harder.
Right. So I like subverting the tropes for sure, and like, so, some of where I've been able to execute that on my friends, for example, is, a D&D game, where I've take their expectations and then subvert them, where it's just like, oh, we're all way experienced players. Like, we've all played either the same game for 20 years or at least the same group, or we've got people that maybe they haven't, but they played for several years, and they are certainly friendly, so they read the memes and they go through the stories and they're familiar with the rules, and then you just deal them a book standard encounter and then twist it on them and watch people's faces roll. Like, you just like, oh, it's one of my favorites, and my brother still hates me for this, so it's great to bring up all the time, was like, we're a ranger in the forest, there is a flower. Well, the DM only mentioned the flower because it is relevant somehow, so the ranger gets down to sketch the flower because that's what happens. Yeah, the flower is a shambling mound. There's nothing in the rules to talk about that. There's nothing whatever, but like, just this innocuous little encounter that should have been a breath of fresh air instead tried to eat their face, type of thing. And
mimics are lovely.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, mimics the next one. Like, that's my second favorite story to tell, but because it is absolutely like, because I used the Dread Gazebo. Like, it's beyond me how my players didn't catch on to it, because if you've been playing D&D certainly for like decades, you've probably heard the story of the Dread Gazebo, but I literally did that.
Enlighten me.
You haven't? Oh man. Okay, so it's a relatively short story. You can literally Google Dread Gazebo and it should have 900 hits, but to briefly go through it. So basically, standard adventuring party, whatever, but you've got a decently high level paladin. He's a very experienced player. This takes place eons ago, so it's like second edition or earlier. But basically, the DM is like, okay, so you're trotting down the road, and at the top of a hill is a gazebo. And the paladin's like, okay, I shout out to it that, evil will be vanquished and blah, blah, blah. And the DM's like, okay. And the player's like, well, did it react? Well, no, it's a gazebo. Okay, then I take out my +3 bow with my demon slaying arrows, and I shoot at it 3 times. Does it take any damage? No, man, it's a gazebo. Well, then I take out my holy avenger and I charge up the hill, and I go to attack it and be like, dude, it doesn't take it. It's a gazebo, man. Like, the player did not get the fact that this was not a demon, or because like Glebrezu, or however you pronounce it, is very similar and whatever else, but he was kind of in the moment and just didn't know that it was a gazebo. So like, loads of players know this story, and I've told this story. I've told this joke at parties or whatever else. Like, my friends and certainly my brother should know about it, right? So I put them in a room with the only description I give them is they get into this room that's like the third or fourth level in a mansion. So they've been through all this other craziness. And the only description I can give them is that the room is full of non-Euclidean geometry. Like there are these little spikes and tentacles and shit's twisted everywhere and you don't know. And in the middle of this room is a white gazebo. And they just kind of look at me and they blink and they like, okay. And they all start moving quietly, sneaking through this room, waiting for some monster to attack them, and immediately turn their backs and ignore the white gazebo, which just happens to be a huge mimic. And so then tentacles start coming out of nowhere and the gazebo tries to eat them because it's a mimic. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think I'm clever, but that story gets me every time because of their reactions. So just hilarious because they had the opposite. Like when I described the gazebo, they were just like, okay, that doesn't fit in my worldview. So I'm just going to dismiss it and ignore it. Oh yeah, that was the monster you were afraid of. So anyway, that's the bullet points version, I guess.
That's fun.
Yeah. I guess I like hurting people if I'm the dungeon master. So there's that.
I mean, that seems to be a big thing in writing
What is
stories.
the point of ever getting into this game and being a dungeon master and not doing that?
Yeah, I mean,
oh yeah, that's fair.
you give them everything that you want, then what's the fucking point of playing the game? There's no struggle. You have to struggle and suffer, and then the payoff matters.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd rephrase it in the point of heroes is to be tested, right? Mm-hmm. And so I play my D&D games typically how I want my fantasy to be. They're all heroes. They're all heroic. That doesn't mean they can't have their flaws and they can't be damaged and whatever. But like, you're going to be the best at what you do because you're the hero. You're going to be, really good at this, whatever. But you also need to have, commensurate challenges or, worthy challenges anyway.
Your hero is only as heroic as the evil, terrible situation that they're up against.
Right.
So if you want the biggest, most valiant Michael Carpenter-esque paladin hero, they have to be fighting someone terrible.
He has Nicodemus. To 1v1 a dragon.
So, yes. Yeah. And then yeah.
Off screen though, because
it can be done. It's happened only off screen twice now.
But so if you really want someone to admire, you have to put like, why do you admire them? You have to see them as to why they're tested. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like, I have to see this hero suffer so that I can have people to role model.
Right. Because otherwise you get the arrogant wizard, right? The guy who's up in his tower and he's sitting in his big chair with a big stupid hat. And you're like, why are you so famous? And it's like, well, I did this, that, and the other thing. And we're like, yeah, well, I didn't see it. So now you're just this judgy, stupid wizard. Like, where did you get all this knowledge and gold from? And like, I fucking killed things to get here. I'm an adventurer. Like, this didn't just spring out of the ground with me at the head of it, man.
See, the internet was always around.
Right.
Yeah, it just it became the megaphone for our normal, like, yelling at and being negative tendencies. Yes, terribleness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I need characters to suffer so that it can have a good payoff. Just like in a video game, if it's too easy and I don't have to work for anything, I don't feel like it's worth it and I don't want to play it. Mm. But even if I don't want to deal through like the grind and the complicated and the effort, it's not worth it without it. So they just have to make it, like for a video game, they have to make me want it enough to actually put in the work for it, and then I have the payoff. And in a book, I have to, like, they're going to suffer and I'm going to be in sympathetic pain, and then I get a payoff.
The only game that ever did that for me was Lego Star Wars, because I wanted that 100%.
Ooh, God, dude. Like, we've played through all the missions and we've done a fair bit of the free play, and I think we're like 40%. That game is suffering to get to 100%. So, like, you're talking about the full saga, right? Like,
well, no, this was just
before all that
prequel one.
Okay, yeah.
I know. I've never been a huge gamer. I think the last system I owned, other than the Wii, was an Xbox, the original.
Right. We've got it on the One X, and yeah, like it's the complete saga now. So it's got, everything pre the new shit and whatever. But
or all 11.
Yeah, and it's just comparatively, it's also terrible compared to the later games, right? Because there's no quality of life adjustments and stuff. So it's like, ow, this hurts to play, especially because we were playing like Lego Marvel, which is came out within the last few years, and it's so much easier, you know. Not that that one's perfect either, but yeah. Anyway, that's a different thing.
Pride and accomplishment. That's what they want.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Now that hurts.
Good.
Oh.
I
Director, you're
return
not
the
familiar
favor.
with that one?
No.
Yeah, EA telling everybody that they wanted to buy a bunch of loot boxes because they wanted them to have a sense of pride
Sense
and
of pride and
accomplishment.
accomplishment. It is still, I
You
think,
can
Oh,
set
I heard
off
the.
every gamer in the world with that
Yeah.
line.
I remember all of the controversy about the loot boxes, but not that phrase for it.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
it's still, I think, the most downvoted comment on Reddit,
yeah,
and it was like a year. It's been 2 years
I
now.
mean, so,
yeah.
so I played EQ2 with my mom because she is a nerd. And like, so from like ages 10 to 13-ish or something, I did that a lot. And I really got into it and enjoyed it. But the moment I like can remember and pin down of this game's going to shit was when they had a card game or something that was attached and you can win other spectacular things in the card game and for your MMO character. It's like, so I saw someone running around like on a spider or something. It's like, how the fuck do you get that? And they said they won it in the card game. Like they didn't put any effort into it. Like, what the fuck am I trying to do here?
Oh, okay. So you don't like Gwent then?
I loved Gwent. So Gwent was great. It's like, Witcher 3 was great because so I had my husband play through it because I don't want to deal with the actual coordination of playing the game. I just wanted the story and I'd watch it. And then at every point it's like, no, play Gwent, no, do this strategy, do that thing. And then we would argue about it. That was really
at that
fun.
point, you should just hand you the controller and walk away.
Yeah, you play the Gwent and I'll play the heroic stuffs.
That was a lot of fun. That was a very good game of both story and game friction and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely on my short list. You know, it's the number one reason for trying to get the Game Pass or whatever too. You know, is because to go through all that. But
it's very, very good. All the stories in it are like, even just the side stories are like of high quality. Of some character actually cares about this, and so you're changing something to an entity that you've now accepted as a person. The expansion packs are wonderful, and they have like, so this is the trope that you're going to be familiar with. Here's how the character attempted to invert it and play by the rules, and but also like fairly be clever, and it still hurt.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely pain is part of the story there. So,
yeah. But I mean, pain makes it worth it. I only really want to see a character who's fully intact if I can also watch their descent. I like characters who are already damaged, in part because they become more clever and wary, but that's not all of it, and I don't know why, and so we're going to explore that in 2 weeks.
Right. It gives them color, it gives them depth, it gives them character, you know.
Yeah.
It just, because otherwise, like you said, you know, like take the spider example, like you didn't have to work for it or anything, you were just given a giant spider to run around, you were just given the rewards. It's probably a huge part of why people don't like the chosen one trope, you know, just be like, you were popped out of a uterus and then 12 years later you were the chosen one, and now all of these people that are amazing and they had to work at their skills are going to come from all over the land to teach you how to do things. Right. You know, ironically, like if you have something in your head, the one that's coming to my mind is like the Belgariad, because it's great high fantasy. It's like, oh, if you liked Lord of the Rings, read this, you know, it's on that kind of list. But it's like, you know, the kid is like, it's all of the tropes, right? Like when Jim talks about, oh, well, high fantasy starts on a farm because that's where high fantasy starts. This kid is born, he's hiding away on a farm. He's the chosen one at like 15 or whatever. The fucking wizard, you know, basically Gandalf or Merlin or whoever for the world comes in, teaches him shit, and then starts getting like, okay, let's go to the Knights of the Round Table and get the Knight of the Round Table. And he's going to teach you how to sword. And then we're going to go get this stealing, murdering, killing bastard, but he's pretty good, and he's going to teach you how to think, you know, and just whatever else. And so like you get this total team of badasses, and it's not a bad book, but like, you know, at what point did the character struggle? You know, like where is that? Where was so much as a tough choice? Like even generals don't necessarily they don't take the field anymore, but they still have to wrestle with the decisions that they made, you know, like
I think I've already suggested you read Sanderson specifically, but I think you would enjoy one aspect of Mistborn in that it is after the chosen one fails. Yeah.
Which is like, how does that even work? You know?
Say that again, EG?
It's like Buffy the Slayer, one dies.
Right.
Sort of. I don't want to spoil it because it was really fun to read through and actually put things together, but I think you would enjoy the inversion of that. Because, I mean, the chosen one can still suffer and still be the chosen one. I haven't read Wheel of Time yet, but I'm pretty sure he suffers while also being the only person who could change something.
Right.
But the Mary Sue, whatever Gary Stu name that you're going to give for someone who always just gets everything handed to him, is the best way of ruining a book. I have seen someone who you could probably call Inda in the whatever Inda series by Sherwood Smith. He's kind of a Mary Sue. Like everything he does, he accomplishes, but he still suffers. And everyone around him is like, how did he do that? How is he the best one at it at every point? But he is. And they do show the cleverness that he has. He's just not aware of it. And even though he accomplishes everything, it's still like the friction was there and it is satisfying.
Yeah, it's usually a combination of factors that because you have to be not only great at everything, not only not really suffer, but everybody pretty much likes you and you just whatever. Like Kvothe, however you technically pronounce it, from the King Killer Chronicles.
Right.
As far as talent goes, he can do whatever the fuck he wants, pretty much. But you know, his whole family is killed, and you go through all this stuff, and he suffers, and people fucking hate him. So you know, he's a prodigy, but that's different from being, you know, a Mary Sue.
Like his interpersonal relationships are still dysfunctional. They're still like he doesn't have the intimacy I guess he wants with almost anyone. I don't know. Even like people have a lot of complaints about Wise Men's Fear, and I kind of understand it, even if I think they're also being prudishly overblown. But even though he's having tons and tons of sex, and people are saying, well, this is just a self-insert thing. It's like he's having tons of sex and he's still not happy. That's the point.
I was gonna say he gets taken like the fairy world, and then he meets the worst demon of ever that ruins his life.
Yeah. I mean,
the fact that he gets to have tons and tons of great sex about it, it's, well, you can take that trade-off.
Yeah, but like he has a conversation with the Fela, I can't remember her name, Fela.
Cool.
However it was spelled, but she says like, yes, like you're wanted, but you're only wanted for a night. No one wants to have a relationship with you because you're too cold. So he can't have the relationship with the girl that he wants, partly because she's a stuck-up bitch, but he's not available. She's amazingly terrible as a person.
God, it's astounding.
There are other problems with that book, but
I went into that series completely blind. I'd never heard of it. I never knew that there was a problem waiting for everything. I never knew that how these characters were received. And I just came to the same conclusions. I was like, she's fucking terrible.
At least she's supposed to be.
Maybe there's something to it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's hard to say when you don't know the full context yet. But it's just like, and I'm willing to grant that can all be turned on its head. But I never understood the extreme reactions. I mean, I understand hating her. I never understood blindly defending without context. That's the kind of thing you really need to earn as defense.
Yeah,
you know, like I hate Harry a lot of times, but I will defend a lot of the context of the decisions he makes, and I won't on plenty of the others.
He put a couple of hints, so it's easy to extrapolate, but you don't know for certain, especially since he used hints before that he turned on its head. But we're never getting Dorsa Stone, so stop talking about it.
we'll get that before we get Game of Thrones. Either one of them. So
Sure.
it may not be good, but you'll get it. We will get it.
I mean, at this point, I
Of
don't
that
know.
I have no doubt.
Would you prefer it to be bad but out and finished, or never happen?
It depends on how bad it is. Like if it's just mediocre, okay. Because everyone has already kind of seen it's the same thing with like Game of Thrones. Like if it came out and it was just mediocre because he had 8 billion plot threads he couldn't wrap up, but it was there. But that was before. That was before everything went to shit with the show and there was nothing else to fall back on. Mm-hmm. So now, if that was mediocre, it'd be like, no, I'm not. No, keep it. I don't care. I don't want it. Go away. You have not earned my patronage anymore. This, I don't care about so much. It's casual. I enjoyed it. If it never comes, I won't be devastated. If it came out and it's mediocre, I won't be devastated. If it came out and it's great, I'm going to be like, well, okay. But he's not going to wrap everything up, so what do I care?
But he doesn't need to wrap everything up, which got me very confused. Like people saying that the books basically got too big, but he doesn't want to break it up into another 4th book or anything. But like he's also said that is a prequel trilogy essentially. So like he doesn't need to wrap everything up because clearly more shit happens. I don't know.
Well, that depends. Is it a prequel and he's going to go on from him at the end onward, or is it a prequel in the sense that it encapsulates everything before he gets there? Because he's still at fucking Hogwarts. By the end of the 2nd book, he's like 16 and he is a young guy. He's what, 25, 28, 30?
Yeah, he's not old.
But that's still a lot of shit to go through. There's still the whole quest with whatever he gets the moniker of becoming the King Killer and everything else, and whether or not Deanna Troi is going to die. And so
I don't get that reference, but I get that reference.
Her name is Deanna. Deanna
Troi.
So there's still, I think that's why people are not confident in its ability to wrap up properly, is because there's not a huge amount of time year-wise necessarily, even though there kind of is. But there's a lot of, it's packed. There's a lot of shit that happens. Or that should happen if it's going to be well developed. It's one thing, you could devote a chapter to be like, I walked in, I killed the king. But nobody's going to like that.
No, because it has to be earned.
Right. So it probably needs at least 2 books.
So does that hurt you, and do you love it?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. This is not, this to me is not, it's not that. It would be one thing if by the time we got to the end and we had the big apocalyptic trilogy and it felt rushed, and I haven't invested basically the majority of my life at that point, because it's not going to end before I'm 45. Or if it does, it won't be much.
I am lately coming to the opinion that it's more okay for things to be slow than rushed.
Well, in theory, but I mean, people die.
Right. That's always the concern, because like how many great authors.
It's easy to say. That's another reason why. Like I get the initial sentiment when you want to defend someone, and we all know this is kind of an outlier compared to what it's been as far as the production of the books go. But so this was now basically 6 years, and there's still now 5-6 case file books, plus the big ones, which he's already said are going to be like gigantic sized ones. So that is at a minimum, at the fastest pace, that's what, 12 years? No one's guaranteed. There's older fans. He's not the youngest person in the world. Plus, then you factor in life, and there's going to be another long break at some point.
Yeah,
maybe more.
It's all percentages, right? Like it used to be like, oh man, well, at least so and so is young, so we don't have to worry about them just aging out. And then you're like, well, yeah, but they could get hit by a bus. Like I hope they don't, but
or I could get hit by a bus and not know the end.
I don't know,
and
guys.
That would piss me off even more.
Hey, director, you're on the West Coast. How apocalyptic does it look outside right now? Because
like a couple of weeks. So the weekend before, like right leading up to Labor Day, I actually messaged Colin. I was like, this is like I'm in fucking Mistborn because I can't see the sun. There's ash raining from the sky, and I can't see Denver, even though I almost always can. And then it snowed on Labor Day.
Do you have a sword?
No, I
Well,
do
then
need
what-
one though. I have a kukri.
No. I don't need a sword either. I still have one. One day, shit is going to require the use of a sword. You might as well have it.
I think I'd prefer a gun over a sword.
Yes,
and
but
kukri's pretty good.
listen,
I mean, a kukri is pretty good if you can use it. So
there is something about being able to draw a sword in a moment of need that is
very satisfying.
Reassuring.
True. Yeah. The problem with a kukri is that you are infinitely more going to terrify the people that know better than the people that don't. And then if the people that know better know that you don't know how to use it, that's going to be a short.
Well, that's the thing. I say this, but my swords, because it's technically a set, have been sitting in the box since I got them. It's been at least 5 years now. I haven't opened it. I haven't touched it. Because my brother and I, we bought each other. We'd always talked about it, and we went down to Disney when he was working there a couple of years ago, and that was our Christmas gifts to each other. We went to, the Epcot, the Around the World, and went to go get ourselves swords.
Bro, I was going to ask you on a mall ninja scale, but you were like at an 11. Like Epcot is like, are you sure that they are metal and not some kind of sturdy plastic? Like, okay.
I think someday in my life, I'm going to buy my husband a Zweihander from that cold, whatever that. I can't remember the name of the brand, but they actually have videos of people having a carcass of meat and how can we chop through it?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind buying something to real forged at a Ren fair one day, but that's I don't go to enough Ren fairs because I like the idea of them a lot more than the practice.
Here's something that hurts me. I've never been to a Ren fair, and this was the year that I was supposed to be able to go.
Oof, yeah.
And now you never will.
There's a lot of that this year.
We were supposed to go to Oktoberfest. We were supposed to go to the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yeah. If you really want to go down the dark path for a little bit of pain here, you never will go to a Ren fair, but your entire life might be a Ren fair right now with the collapse of society. So, winning.
And there's you without a sword, unprepared.
Yeah. I'll be the damsel in distress.
I'm gonna tell you a little thing about video games in the apocalypse, right? If you get the drop on somebody with your kukri and they've got a sword, now you have a sword. So,
And if you see someone around with colorful hair, you're the NPC. So follow them.
Okay, that's fair.
The NPC.
Yeah. I was like, where's this one going?
Yeah.
They're the playable character. You're the NPC.
Either
they're running into all the shit and you know to run the other way, or they're running from all the other shit and you know to run with them. Either way, you have your direction.
Probably try to make yourself useful and not look like a threat. Got it.
Your party members carry shit. Fucking, I can carry some stuff. I got pockets.
I've had people offer to carry my ammo, so I'm good.
What else is the 4-year-old for?
Yeah, right. Reloading.
Watching after the other ammo carrier who can't hold its head up.
Right.
That's a weird left turn in our conversation.
Yeah.
Well, see, now I'm just picturing the scene in The Patriot where he takes his kids out and shoots all those people, and I assume that's what Justin's going to teach his kids to do in the Everglades when they get old enough.
See, it's funny because I've definitely wanted to watch The Patriot, but then I'm like, yeah, not appropriate for 4-year-olds right now. So I do keep teasing the wife. It's like, he's 2 more years and we're going to take him out to the range. So he'll be big enough to hold a 22 at that point.
But will he know not to lick it?
No confidence in that.
Yeah, I was just like...
That's the kind of thing where you cannot check enough to make sure that you've actually taken the clip out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like you could, even if it was a squirt gun, you'd be like, wait a minute, let me just cock that real quick.
See,
where's the safety on this super soaker?
That's the great thing. They always stand in front of you, and then if you are not confident in the state of the gun, you take it from them. You don't at any point turn your back to these people. I say people because there are some adults that fit in this category. So if I have to tell you more than twice to watch where you're pointing the gun, come on. So And that's not in the sense of like, oh, I told you and whatever. That's like I had to physically stop you. You're done. So, yeah, I've been to the range with those guys.
Before we end, I have a question back to our original topic.
Okay.
We had an original topic.
Yes.
Briefly, I want to know your favorite tragedies that you've come across, like the ones that stand out to you the most.
Darth Plagueis the Wise, because we don't even know the.
Go ahead, recite it, and then I'll correct you.
It's not a tale the Jedi would have told me, so I can't. Sorry.
Not a story. You already got it wrong.
Oh, sorry. Has it been too long since I watched the prequels?
Which were just fine.
Let's see. The greatest tragedy, is that what you're...
Oh, your favorite. Maybe not like the most tragic, but like the one that stood out to you the most.
See, this is what you get for springing stuff on us while we're podcasting, because we got to think and fill the air. So what's yours?
Well, the one that stands out to me the most right now is Dark.
No, you.
Okay, right.
So, I mean, like, because I'm very, very heartbroken, but I was the
That's
best
the
ending
German
possibly.
One, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to watch it.
No,
Watch it. You have to.
So
I didn't like it.
No.
Not mean to turn this into a PSA about that, but okay.
No, yeah, it's fine. So the first season you got to suffer through the boredom, and the director and Spencer, right, were the ones that cornered me and beat me to death and finally got me through it. But yeah, like, because season 1 is boring because it's people, and you get a little bit of mystery and it's super mundane until like the second half maybe, but the first 4+ episodes are boring as shit, and they're supposed to be because they're like a soap drama, but it pays off. Like there is not a wasted moment in Dark is the only thing that I can tell you.
Yeah,
so,
those episodes that are boring, the way I put it to Justin, and I think it's still accurate, is you have to understand what is normal in order to watch it get all fucked up.
Right. And we're talking like meta, crazy, like love, not kind of Lovecraftian, but I mean, it's all people, right? Like, don't get me wrong, but like it is a great science fiction. It is a great story, but the problem is the story is so intertwined that like to tell you anything is to spoil it potentially. So for us to tell you why the payoff is there, like, and that's why I know it's a hard sell. Like, this is another one of those with like, I don't share all of my vices, right? Like I told my brother this because we've been pacing each other through various shows. Like we both watch Avatar, we both watch Korra. We watch Korra mostly at the same time, finished within a day of each other, stuff like that. We're both watching Star Trek, all of that stuff. So it's like, hey, what are you watching? What are you watching? And I'm like, hey, I watched this. You are not going to like it. Like you're not going to start out liking it anyway. And for me to sell it to you is almost an impossible task, but I can tell you it's probably going to be worth it, but it's also like, it depends. Do you like stuff because it hurts? Because this is going to be your thing.
It doesn't necessarily have to be that it hurts, but that is one of the reasons that I loved it that much. It's also that everything that they needed to do and all of the hints and all of the structure to accomplish what they did was there.
Right.
They did it with such careful consistency that it was the best payoff ever. Because
for example, this isn't Game of Thrones season 8. You're not going to get through this and just be like, why the fuck did I even bother?
No.
It's an enclosed story. It is handled with precision. It's not perfect. You can make arguments for this, that, or the other thing, but there's not a wasted moment. Yeah.
So. We'll have that argument eventually. But so Dark is the thing that stands out to me the most because I don't know, it's the first thing I thought of when you suggested this topic. Because like, why am I so excited to rewatch this thing constantly? And then otherwise I go back to basically just what my favorites were. The tragedies that stand out to me was like the Dragon Prince series of like, I loved those characters. When bad things happen to them, it fucking hurt. And changes and stuff. So, the big ones.
Yeah. I might be shielding myself, but I mean, I can't really think of anything particular right now. Like I'm even trying to think about
Give it 3 hours
older
and
stuff.
you'll remember
I know,
them
right?
all.
The shower, tomorrow or something, and just be like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
Get everybody back on the horn. We're doing this.
Usually the people who die without fulfilling their potential, I guess. Probably. Because there are some people like that are meant to be tragic, like what's his name? The guy in the Green Mile.
Oh. Okay.
John Coffey.
Yeah.
He's a tragic character, but he's kind of like that was always going to be the end result type deal. I don't know. It didn't hit me when I was a kid, but I could see why it hit a lot of kids. Was that girl in the Bridge to Terabithia? Like it was just like, wait, this is a kid's book. Why is the 11-year-old dying of cancer?
Yeah, I remember having to read that in like
stuff
fifth
like
grade.
that. There's guys in historical or classical fiction that get a bad break. I mean, Oedipus gets fucked over quite a bit. So does Othello. But I don't like Shakespeare. I can't stand Romeo and Juliet, which is usually the greatest cliche example people give for this kind of thing.
I mean, Romeo and Juliet could probably be an entirely different story if the line from Ace Ventura had been in play. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, just wait longer. Because like that's the tragedy is like, wait, are you? No, why? Like just fucking wait, bro. Yeah.
Or just move out of your parents' house.
Different times, Look, we're all millennials.
Clearly.
We can't judge.
Yeah, I don't know.
Millennials?
I mean, Boromir is always a good answer, but that's just because I'm biased towards Lord of the Rings. I always
there was some good tragedies in there, like the Boromir, Faramir, and their family fuck up. That was good.
Right. Well, and I mean, depending on the tact you want to take, like you could argue that a fair bit of it is just showing the corruption of Sauron. That's ultimately could be excused for a lot of the actions and whatnot. But I mean, we don't get. I don't know if we get a lot of context, and I'm not sure. I mean, there's probably an entire volume of the histories of Middle Earth dedicated to it, but. What we see on screen or in the books, so to speak, is just, it's not a great look. And, the whole thing like, oh, God damn it, Boromir's dead. Oh, the worst tragedy. It's like, yeah, father, I'm still right here. It was like, who the fuck are you? Get out of my way. Like that shit hurts,
Yeah.
So,
and
then, even Boromir coming back around and representing that heroic moment, despite the fact that he was clearly under the influence and everything else, but taking potentially dozens of arrows fighting the Uruk-hai, to protect the halflings and stuff like that. He definitely, I mean, if there is a moment that redeems you for your past deeds, that's a pretty good one.
I mean, he could have let one of them go and shoot Pippin. That would have been fine.
Why Pippin? Come on.
But Pippin's the foil for the whatever the fuck his father's name was. Right?
Denethor.
Oh.
Down, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Pippin just keeps doing stupid shit. And I know they play it up more in the books because he's like not a child, and or more in the movies rather, because he's like not a kid in the books. He's actually more of a mature person, and he doesn't, get Gandalf killed, and he doesn't ruin everything by. Well, actually, he does ruin everything by picking up the Palantir in the books.
Thing is
but
pretty lifted from the pages there. So,
So I mean, of any of the hobbits, the one who needs to die the most is Frodo. I think everyone always agrees on that. But I was never a giant fan of them. Bilbo was a good hobbit, and as the rest of them, I could take or leave.
He's definitely the scariest hobbit. So
scary Bilbo teeth.
I figued out my answer.
Because we delayed long enough.
I know, right? Well, I figured it out halfway through his 20-minute diatribe, but I think so.
Who are you talking about?
Oh, I didn't say I don't do it, but The Mist. The Mist is the best. The Mist is
the movie you mean? Yeah. The whatchamacallit? Yeah,
I have not seen it, but I do know what the ending is.
That was a good one.
That's the one that I watch when I need a little bit of horror in my life and I don't have a lot of time and I really want to hurt afterwards. And
why do you want to hurt? Why?
Sometimes
the question.
I don't know. So going back to my whole I like teasing people and I like being annoying and shit like that is like sometimes things are just going too well, you know. Sometimes people just got that cushy life, you know. And today was a good day. The birds are singing and the kids are playing, and I just want to suffer. And I don't know. It's been a while since I've needed that in my life.
I've been led to understand they did like a black and white cut of that film, and it's supposed to be even better.
I watched the black and white cut because this is one of my favorite movies of recent times. Like it hits all of the buttons to the point where finally, like, I went and read the novella, and the novella is also great but different. You know, in some plot points, but it's a novella. How far off track can you get? You know, so I watched through the black and white, but it's, I don't know, like for people, I guess if you like the original, like Walking Dead or whatever, or the Night of the Living Dead, stuff like that, fine, whatever. But I prefer color. You know, I'm vain like that. You know, I prefer the you know, the experience, like the fact that you're in the mist. Like most of the time when you're out dealing with the fog, it doesn't matter if it's gray or in color. You know, but I don't know. I mostly prefer the original. So.
Yeah, my first experience with it was, and I didn't even know it was really like a short story or a novella or anything, was they have I don't know if it's a reading of it exactly or if it's an adaptation, but it's just audio. And they have it at I want to say it's down at the Air and Space Museum down by you know, down in Florida.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I want to say it. I know it is because that's where I went to, but I can't say if they still have it anymore. But because it was off in this weird section where it was like, I think they were just trying to describe the power of sound and how evocative it could be given aviation. But they had like 4 stories, and you just sat down, and it was The Mist.
Nice.
And it was a reading of it with the sound effects, and you can't, it's all in your head. So it's like, right. Oh, well, fucking, I'm 9 and this is terrifying.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
That's great.
Yeah, that it is good. And I mean, yeah, it's, you know, everything about it is great. You know, like in the novella, you know, Stephen King owns up to the fact that, you know, like this is kind of Lovecraftian, you know, like they make references in the novella. I think through the descriptions, or maybe one of the characters like has it pop into his head. So even, you know, years after I've seen the movie and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is great, because he at least knew what he was channeling, you know, or what he was writing at the time. This is probably not one of his coke-filled, you know, binge novels or whatever, but I don't remember how I even got into the movie, but like I just saw it and it was great, and the ending's a big fuck you, and that makes it even better. And you know, like it just, the whole thing, like, and then even the details of it fascinate me, right? Like there aren't a lot of movies or materials that I get into to be like, oh man, you know, this actor went on to do that thing, or this actress, she never did. I don't get into that shit. Like it's more fun when it's like, oh, this was, you know, so-and-so's first movie, and this is where they got started, but it's like I only know them because they're famous. Like The Mist is almost the reverse of that, in the sense that like Frank Darabont, you know, directed it, if I recall correctly, and then a lot of the cast went on to do The Walking Dead, which, if you know me, I'm super into zombies as well. So, you know, that was a pretty much like, wait a minute, you guys are all in the same thing. And then going back to watch The Mist and being like, because the characters are so different, even though it's the same actor or actress, specifically because Carol's the one that comes to mind. Like I didn't realize she was in both things until I watched it years after The Walking Dead came out. But yeah, The Mist is there, but definitely the ending. And I don't know why. I think it's the positively sheer horror of it, and the fact that ultimately it was, you know, I don't want to spoil it.
The worst choice imaginable.
Well, given the information at the time.
Right.
Yeah, but like it's the.
I mean, talk about waiting 5 minutes for it to
yeah
not be a problem. So
they made that choice. I mean, I know what it is, but I haven't seen or read it. And
you gotta watch it, man.
All of the things at some point.
No, like tonight. Is it still on Netflix? Like,
probably.
I know I bought it, but I thought it was on Netflix for a while.
Have you guys seen Parasite?
Yes.
Not yet.
Wait,
the Korean one.
Yeah. That was good. I just had this discussion with this one
Don't
because he
change the
wanted to know if
subject.
I actually
No, it's like
like.
because I was just thinking of like remembering like that was kind of all fucked up in terms of tragedy, but it was
That was funny as shit.
funny. I mean,
Oh
funny
yeah,
to
no, that
certain.
movie that's dark comedy. That's dark comedy done well. I liked Parasite a lot.
It was a lot of stuff. Like there was obviously comedic moments. There's obviously horrific moments. It's like, but all of it is fucked up. And it was one of those things that was everything done perfectly.
Yeah,
Actually, after
that
finishing
was,
Dark, it reminded me of Parasite.
that was on my list of things that the other
Yeah.
one asked me the other day if I actually like anything. So.
Yeah, it's an important question to ask sometimes.
Unfortunately, only the TV show is on Netflix, and the TV show was okay, but I mean, like, if you want more of the movie, it hadn't gotten to that point. I watched the first season, but it's just a drama. Like,
maybe
it's just like
maybe it's on the Google Drive that the other Jacob put out the other day.
There's no such thing. So
everything is perfectly sourced and branded from the correct corporate brands, and nothing is ever streamed illegally ever.
beep boop. Don't sue us. We are corporate drones.
Yeah, but
I'm not big enough to be sued.
Which of the 11 words are going to get us demonetized today? So,
how many times have you said the word death?
At least two.
At least once.
Death.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the greatest tragedy.
Are we done now?
I guess.
Do you have one you'd like to share, E.G.?
I did. I said stuff.
He was the whole Othello.
I said stuff before he did.
Yeah, I guess.
Just because they don't hit me because I have no emotions doesn't mean they don't hit other people.
You totally have emotions. We like to push your emotional buttons all the time.
I have 3 emotions. Anger, rage, and
sadistic pleasure in other people's pain.
Indifference.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because we've definitely seen plenty of the anger and the rage and stuff. So.
Because a lot of that stuff falls into subsets, frustration.
These people clearly haven't read the same book as I have.
Things like that they're all under the subheadings.
See, and it's funny because, like, if you want to talk about something that I enjoy, I don't enjoy being hurt, but I definitely can enjoy being angry sometimes. So
that is so weird, but it's so very true. It's enjoyable to be angry, which
I think it's so much better than just being positive about everything. I don't understand how people do it.
Right.
I will never understand how people go through life like everything's fine, silver lining,
everything is awesome.
Find the good. Shut up.
Well, who wants to be negative all the time?
That one, clearly.
Listen, being negative all the time is the pragmatic approach because you're either correct or you're pleasantly surprised.
Sometimes I don't want to be correct.
Well,
yeah, no.
I can't live in that world.
Yeah.
I don't have access to the ignorant world. I did once upon a time, and then I listened to The Mist when I was 9 years old. And here we are.
There we have it.
Yeah. So expose your children to horror at a young age, and they become him.
Still got a few years, so
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye.
So Dresden next week, and then we can make more Rashid jokes.
Yay.
No. Woohoo!